Excited to introduce Wendy Fan to you. She is a great friend of Baker Creek, and a magnificent gardener and educator. Through her Gardens of Wendyland in Los Angeles, she helps so many folks grow great, wonderful gardens indoors and out. You can also learn so much from her on her YouTube channel and follow her on Instagram. And today our friend Wendy is going to talk about the plants that inspire how we taste and live. Please welcome Wendy.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Looks like this one's worked. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. Stay still. Okay. Well, I'm excited to tell you guys some of the plants that I've selected today through my experience in basically, a kitchen garden. What are these plants going to be for me? And so this is kind of like more personal, but I hope that this would excite you and inspire you in some ways. And so this is called Garden for the Senses. And some of you guys may know I garden out of a small space out of LA. I have about 300 square feet, and I got about probably 40 different types of plants, and that's like 40 types, not 40 potted plants. I started gardening, I wasn't like growing food, it was growing all kinds of like rare plants. That's always been something I've been into. Ornamental, things that smell really good, things that feel really interesting or look really interesting or smell really awful, like rotting flesh, but it's intriguing. And I want to know what that smells like from a plant that's alive. And so from that, I sort of moved on because my dog slowly started gaining weight. Eventually, she got bigger than me. I couldn't really take her on a walk. My dad was also diagnosed with like pre-diabetes. And that was a time when I started thinking maybe it's time for a change. And what better way to do it than through food, right? So that's how I kind of got started growing food. It was culinary herbs, eventually moving on to medicinal herbs because I started finding out people so-and-so or my dog or so-and-so, had problems. I want to seek out these medicinal herbs to help them. And so that's how I started growing more food. And then recently, if you guys are aware of in LA, earlier this year, there was wildfires. Well, I'm very fortunate that I was not really affected by it, except that we were still part of that zone where it's like at risk possibly, and they always tell you to, hey, pack up your things just in case. And that was a time when it started kind of made me thought about what kind of plants I want to take with me, because obviously I can't take the whole garden. So that's what kind of inspired today's talk, is to share with you guys what did I decide if I really had to move, what would I take? So hold on tight. We are going to embark on this journey together, going to nowhere land. But a lot of these will be a few perennials that you can grow indoors during the winter, and a lot of them are annual. So even say if nowhere land was like here, you'll still be able to grow them. Before I start on sharing about these plants, I want to talk a little bit about, the experience of eating, like tasting food flavors through our senses. So I call this a flavor spectrum because it's beyond those 5 basic tastes. Just like the 5 basic, what do you call them, flavor profiles? I'll start with the first one. The first one's like sweet. It's pretty basic. Does anyone know what the other 4 are?
Salt.
Sour, salty, bitter, umami. There you go. Okay, I think did we get all 5? I said sweet, sour. Oh my God! We should have covered that. Okay, you guys cheated. Umami, yeah. So umami is actually something like, it's not a new flavor, but we didn't even recognize it until like early 2000s or something. And is anyone familiar with umami, or we just know all this, like all the flavors we just went through, or should I explain a little bit about any one of them? Okay, so I guess umami. Okay, so that one is actually a taste. Gives you different ones. But it's like this rich, comforting taste. I think I see a lot of in like really long, cooked food, soups, stews, and different types of food that has like really savoriness, and it's kind of a taste that kind of lingers and makes you keep wanting more, is how I would describe it. It's got like a lot of depth to it. And surprisingly, like umami, it's actually the taste that comes from glutamate. And it's a chemical compound that gives you this flavor, and it's actually in a lot of different foods, but certain foods has a lot more of this flavor, such as tomatoes or mushrooms. You guys find a lot of seafood would especially have that kind of flavor. Fermented foods also depends on how you cook your food or braise it or really concentrating that flavor. The umami flavor would really be enhanced. Fermented foods is one of them. Soy sauce is also fermented, so that's why you get that kind of rich flavor. Nutritional yeast or aged food, I guess, aged cheeses. So that's why we really like, if you want to break it down, like tomatoes and mushrooms, why we like certain foods so much is because it has the complexity or just different flavors, but especially with the umami that keeps you wanting more. Another one I want to introduce you to is called the aftertaste. And it's not like nobody, everyone who's had food have experienced these, but you may not be aware of. But there is a term we call returning sweetness. It's actually a term like Chinese we use a lot. It literally means returning sweetness. Like after you take your initial bite or a sip of food, after that flavor goes away, there's something else that you start to pick up. You ever notice, say, like a cup of tea, herbal teas, chamomile or dandelion root tea, or maybe artichoke heart, something that has a little hit of bitter, and then it's after that, wait for a few seconds, then you start tasting like some sort of sweetness in your mouth. It's very subtle. It's not like putting candy or a scoop of sugar in, but it's something really subtle, and that is actually adds the complexity to the experience overall. And that's the part that usually comes with sometimes with bitter foods, like bitter melon. Yes. There is a hint of bitter, I think, into potatoes and other foods. I think foods in general just have a different flavor, but certain flavors are more pronounced than others, right? Say if you think strawberry, what would you say the first word you would describe the flavor of strawberry? Sweet, maybe? Yeah. So sweet comes through first, but there's actually a little bit of tang, right? The sourness starts to come in, and that's when it's so interesting, because when you just have something just purely one flavor, say just sweet, it's just the same as me putting a scoop of sugar in my mouth. Maybe it's good the first couple of scoops, but after that it starts feeling really sick. Yeah. So that's when the sour, the tang comes to play, and it just makes it more exciting, very stimulating for your appetite. And bitter foods and that returning sweetness is really acts that similar way. It's gradual. It's not like when something really sweet and you get pow with that sourness, that just makes you really salivate. But it kind of does it in a slower way, and that actually that's when I think it brings a lot more depth and complexity to the food. So it's never about one thing, versus the other. So if you're not too aware of that next time, maybe if you had a cup of tea or something take that sip, just wait for a few seconds and see if you experience anything different or anything more you notice. So aside from that, there's also sensations. I just want to introduce you guys to the different type of senses so that it would make more sense when I explain, introduce you to some of these plants that I want to share with you guys. But there's also astringent, that dry tannin taste, maybe in pickled capers, it's one of them, or some sort of also herbs, right? Leafy greens and all that has a little of that flavor in it. But all of that coming together is what makes your food experience so full. It's hard to say picking just this flavor or that flavor. It's more about it coming together. And then on top of that, you have, building up with interest like sensations, like spicy food, like peppers or peppercorns, or cooling, like say mint, or temperature-wise. You drink your soup cold, it's a different experience. You drink your soup really hot, it's a different experience, or tingling or numbing. Numbing, there's numbing peppers, or what is the other one called? Toothache plant. Anyone tried that before? Yeah. Numbing, tingling. Whereas tingling comes before numbing. That's how I see it's the different levels. So yeah, all that kind of plays, into mixed food really exciting. And then on top of that, you have the experience through texture, bumpy, fluffy, slimy. Some things may not sound very enticing, but hey, you guys like okra and all that, Yeah. Exactly. And then it makes that sliminess, actually it makes it really good, like almost like a sauce thickener. It really coats your food really well. So it's all about just like really being in harmony. Pretty much everything, most things has some sort of scent. They're aromatics. Some would like to describe as like fruity, floral, citrusy, or musty, earthy, however you want to describe it. But usually I think our first experience of having food or anything is just through our nose, from really far away. You can already imagine what that tastes like just by inhaling, like taking a breath. So with all that, I'm gonna share my first pick with you guys. And I kind of went through, my thought process was to say, hey, if I were to start this kitchen garden for myself, it's not only gonna have to be like kind of like nutritional values, but it also offers me, something for my mental health, for my physical health, something that keeps me sane until maybe another human comes along if I had to move away somewhere alone. I kind of went through and I thought I'm gonna pick out certain foods that would fit into each of these categories that we just talked about, these different flavors. And we just talked about the lingering sweetness, so mine as well, just while memory is fresh, I want to share with you guys bitter melons. This one is definitely an acquired taste. Luckily, I've always liked it. I grew up eating it, and bitter is something I think in probably a lot more Asian culture is more familiar with. But for example, like if you had wine or some sort of food, there is a slight, bitter to it that really helps to enhance your foods. And bitter melon is one of them that I really like because it has that interesting texture. Not just that it's crisp and juicy, and it smells kind of like a melon. It's beautiful. I love how it feels in the hands when you're working with it and slicing through. And just the texture really helps to kind of bring your dishes to life too, just by how it coats the flavors or matching with other ingredients, And yeah, this is definitely an annual that I think I would take with me because it's really fast growing, right? Even somewhere right now that I'm growing in a small space, that's basically an alleyway. It's like 2 solid walls. I get a lot of shade. So I depend a lot on vertical gardening, trellising, and vining, and this is exactly it. It's a vining plant. It can grow in part sun or full sun, so it makes it much easier for me. And I like that I can just, they start flowering pretty soon. And this is a versatile plant. You can have the fruits and the leaves. The leaves is actually edible, but it's super bitter. I don't know if it's gonna take a little longer to taste that returning sweetness coming through. But it's so good for your liver. Definitely, when you're pruning back, you can always take that and save them for tea, dry those leaves for tea. You can even do thin slices of these fruits to dry them for tea. But I want to share a couple of my favorite ways to use this. What's really interesting about bitter melons to me is that even though it's bitter by itself, but when you mix it with other ingredients, I don't think it makes other foods bitter. That's what's really interesting to me. And the more ripe they are, the less bitter they get. So you can kind of choose the level of bitter or it's more mild, or it gets more creamy too. It's softer, it's more creamy once it gets more yellow. So I really enjoy that just this one fruit or this one plant, I get to play with it, like a lot of options I have, especially when you're growing yourself, right? You get to do that. And then, I really enjoy them. You can stuff them any ways you want, really fun. Stir fries, super easy way. I just do like scrambled eggs, with it. Those little skin, that red skin around the seeds, you guys seen? They're quite sweet. It's so funny how the outside is bitter, but the inside is like that little red bulk around is sweet. And so there's like a lot of ways to eat this. And another one of the dishes that I grew up eating, it's like a sour, spicy, salty dish, and it has bitter melon in it. The bitter melon is the bitter, and then we would ferment maybe like a Chinese mustard greens. So you get that strong mustard kick, and it's a little bitter. You get that sour from the ferment. Those thick stems are super succulent, so they're really crunchy and juicy. You add peppers to it when you ferment them, so they're really spicy. Well, if you like it really spicy. So we have this spicy sourness, and then we add this bitter. For some reason, it's really appetizing. It makes me want to keep eating more, even if I feel like I'm, if you're like really full. So another way I started playing with bitter melon was to ferment it. I was thinking, what if I skip that step and see if I could ferment it and have like probiotics in it, right? And it turned out to be really good. And I love them in my tacos. And that and pairing with bell peppers and different things. So I just love bitter melon for that reason. There's just so many ways I can use them. So that is what checked off bitter for me. The next one, this one's more tropical. Anyone is familiar with this one? It's called a June plum, also known as Amberola. You get these more like in really tropical areas or islands like Caribbean, Jamaica. It starts off green and then it turns yellow. But when it's green, people eat it was like super sour, but really crunchy. It's so much about texture, it's dense. And it's interesting because what makes this fruit kind of funky and so rustic looking almost, but you pop it out, you see that picture, the long vertical picture is how you would cut it out, and that's where you could eat. The inside looks like a spiky ball, and that's like the root and where it holds the seed. So if you just take a bite like an apple, eventually it's really gonna scrape and like cut and poke your gum. Painful, I don't recommend it. So we kind of like ply it out like that and just eat it that way. And the smell of this is like unripe mango, but also pineapple. So it's really bright. And it's so fun when you actually peel the skin, but you can also kind of do a marinade with the skin to make and add to a salad. A little bit of, like a sweet, salty, spicy, or even just as a little appetizer, just with the skin. So you can use a lot of parts of this tropical fruit tree. The leaves are also edible. The only drawback is that this plant is a little sensitive to the cold, so we'll have to take it indoors. So realistically speaking, I probably, there's a chance I may not get fruits, but that's okay. I would totally grow this for the greens because the greens smell like the fruit and it's still sour. So like, I love just munching on that in the garden. I love adding that to salads or whatever I want to add to. I love that sourness, but it's not lemon. It's something fresh and very tropical, so something different. When it turns yellow, it's got like the perfect balance of sweet and sour, and that fragrance and that pineapple and mango comes through even more. You can definitely graft it and you get a much faster fruits out of it, and you can grow. The best part about this one is it grows pretty well in a container, so I can just bring it inside over the winter. You may think I would choose like a fruit or something, but something sweet would definitely be corn for me. Credit to Baker Creek. They got better pictures than me sometimes, so So this one is the Bull Sweet, is the one I chose just to share, but obviously all kinds of corn is amazing, and there's the ones that has like the more drier taste, ones that are really juicy. There's also Asian varieties that has more of a chewiness to it. It's not as sweet, but the texture is almost like a sweet rice. But like dense and chewy. I think some like Korean markets might have, like the frozen section, they have some corns like that too. So the texture is really nice, and I kind of like to use it as like a filler in the salad or in any kind of food that you mix other ingredients with. And corn is just so ridiculously good, right? You can have them all kinds of ways. You can pick, the baby corns to eat when you want to concentrate just the energy to have that one big plump corn on the top. You can pluck those little corns. Have anyone tried them? The baby corns before the kernels actually form? They're really good, like grilled or in stir fries. So you can utilize the ones that you want to pluck away. And then corn just off the field is super sweet and juicy. I love juicing the corn and make corn milk. It has, like a nice grassy, you know what corn is, how corn smells. But it's just so creamy and it's so sweet, you don't have to add anything else with it. So that's like one way I really enjoy corn, is when it's so freshly picked, it's so sweet. That's what I like to make with it. But on top of that, you can even, mix it into a salad or anything you make raw. But you can also grill it, roast it or whatever. I'm sure you guys have plenty of ideas for corn, and this is like so simple. Like, why would you choose corn out of everything else? But Yeah, I just see the versatility of corn. And like, say if I were to grow a melon, I can't think of that many things I can do with the actual fruit. But something like this, there's also, some calories, there's carbohydrates, it would sustain, I can grow a lot of it, and to store it, right? You can dry it, you can wait for them to dry, pick them, and process them, make cornmeal out of it. Polentas are so good. You can keep, grinding them down, getting them finer to get flour, or you can make cornstarch. Yeah, it's just so cool that there's so many things you can do with corn. And we actually do a really good tea with it too, just by the corn husk and the silk, the hair, is that what you call it? And it still like adds so much sweetness to your broth. So even with that, I can still reuse and just use every part of it pretty much. If I had the space, I would grow corn again. Here's one that satisfies my salty cravings. Rock samphire, one of my favorite plants. It's kind of succulent, crunchy, and this is something you would find around like the coastal regions. So it's more like a wild harvest kind of food, but you can grow it. I grow them, and they're really hardy. That's the great thing I think about plants that you can find in the wilds, that they are just naturally so strong. Ones by the sea, you get like this really mineral taste to it. They're mineral rich, they're so good for you. And they can take up salt really well, a lot more tolerant than other plants. And what's really cool about this is, say, if I happen to be landing somewhere with a lot of salt and I can't grow anything else, hopefully not the whole piece of land is like that, I would be able to start with something like this that like tolerates salt, and maybe I can use it to draw the salt out of the soil. These plants usually aren't that, the roots are not that deep. They do take it up through the roots and feed it to the plants, and the roots I think the most it goes through is like probably 1 foot deep, which is I think quite enough for a lot of veggies that we grow. So you can start with that, and then until you keep repeating the process until you help extract and remove all the excess salt, you can start planting regular crops in there. But this is really cool because the way this herb smells is like parsley, carrot, and celery in a blend. So it's like instead of taking 3 plants with me, I can just take 1 of these. And they propagate really easily through cuttings, aside from seeds, but then cuttings. And you can also use the seeds. You can use the seeds, you can grind them just like coriander, right? And kind of sprinkle on top of your food or mix it in your salsas or whatever. And then I also like to make like a flavored spice salt with it. You can actually dry these leaves and grind them up, and they'll be like, very aromatically rich salt. Well, that's really cool about this plant. I really enjoy this one. And I like to put in some juices and smoothies, and it just adds it's an interesting taste of those blends. Another one I have to share more than one, sorry, I like savory foods. So this one is called ice plant lettuce. Talk about the texture of this. We have one of these by my home in LA. These ones take full sun. This one takes a high amount, from 6 to 12 hours, so a lot more sun than usual. This one is really cool too because this one actually takes up even more salt than the plant before. So the idea of this is that if you can pull out the salt and eat it through the plants, it's actually healthier for you, but also it's a way to extract the salt out of the soil. But the thing is, before the plant dies, you have to harvest them, otherwise it puts the salt back in the soil. Baker Creek actually has these seeds. I need to try them again. I really love this veggie. So these little clear sacs, they're called bladder cells, and that's the part that holds the salt. So that's what keeps the plant going, is to help reduce the amount of intake for the really important parts of this for the plant to thrive. They also would open their pores during the daytime like most plants do to intake carbon dioxide, but they also do it at night. They do that so that it's their way of kind of staying around for so long just by evolving. But super hot days, or they're feeling really stressed, the soil is really dry or extremely salty environment, they wouldn't do it in the morning, they'll do it at night so that they won't lose so much moisture. I thought that was amazing when I found this plant. And it has a really succulent, crisp, and interesting texture. Just imagine all these little lumpy bumps, and they look like those regular ground cover ice plants. But this one's edible, so it's really cool. I recently found them near the beach. So lucky, because this usually comes around like after, I think, late winter for us in LA. So I think right around this time, once it starts to warm up, they kind of die back and then they restart again. So this is one of the plants I really enjoy, and they're really good stir fried too. Like in a quick pickling too, you get that quick, like that sour, that crunch, that mineral taste, and the salt from this plant. Okay, the umami, tomatoes. So I have to have tomatoes in it, just something that we really all enjoy. I enjoy them too. Black cherry tomatoes is usually the go-to that I grow in my small garden, because you know how tomatoes, they're delicious and feel so rewarding when you get that first harvest. But the larger ones take much more time to grow, and they're just not as many on the in one plant. So black cherry tends to grow best where I'm at, even part shade. Like one plant I was able to harvest, I think like a full 5-gallon bucket, like a few times a week. It was insane. And I just like how it's like sweet, but it's also complex. Usually I find the tomatoes with like more like actually dark colored produce have more flavor. So this one is really good with also the purples in there, right? The antioxidants, it's so high, yeah. And you can have them fresh and grilled or roasted or dried and really concentrating that flavor. And that umami that we were just talking about earlier is what makes tomatoes, I think, that's what makes tomatoes so addicting to us, is because it covers all of these different flavors, but on top of that, you get that, to add the layer, which is the umami. And I love sun-drying them, concentrates the flavor, but then you can powderize them and then add them back to your soups or sauces or whatever you make. So it's like tripling your tomato experience. And what's great about growing, if you had the space for indeterminate, that you can grow it that way, or you can always do you guys heard of that trellis, I forget what that's called, the lean and, I forget the term. Lean and, what is that called, the term? The sway, I know, it's like you can grow it up on the string, and thank you. Well, that's another way too. Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, that I like using. Oh goodness, it does not come to mind. But anyway, what you do is you have a pole. It's really simple, and you just have a string, and you feed that plant. You weave it through that and the main stem, and you trim off the other parts. And then once the plant grows all the way up, and then you just, move it over, and eventually it kind of wraps around, round and round, and you drop the plant lower. So it just keeps going, but it just keeps it really controlled, within that space. So that works really well for a small space for me. It's just also easy to tend to. You don't have to keep walking forever or doing so many things. It's just very stationed. So that's how I like to, take care of it. With anything that's like indeterminate, even cucumbers. Tomatoes is just, it's a fruit to me, it's a vegetable, it's a sauce, it's a soup, it covers quite a lot.
All the fruits, plants, whatever featured at Baker Creek, you can get the seeds.
Most of them you can. This one you definitely can, and yeah. And don't forget, all the things I share, like the corn or the tomatoes or different veggies, they have a variety too, yeah. You're welcome. So is that ice plant. I saw that. I was like, I have to get that again.
They have bitter melon.
They do. I got the white bitter melon seeds through them originally. The white is less bitter, by the way. Guys, yeah. Here's one that I recently learned about, long pepper vine. It's related to the peppercorn. And this one, because I don't eat like super spicy food, I just decided to, rather than going with chili peppers, I went with a pepper or peppercorn. So this one's actually in a lot of Indian food. Yeah, it's a tropical, and it was just so cool when I first learned about, like, wow, these ones grow as a vine. So they grow and they start fruiting sooner than, say, a peppercorn tree. And it's really unique because you can eat at any stage of life. It starts out green, as you can see my hand holding it. The green one, it's actually more crunchy. It's the spiciest is when it's like underdeveloped or hasn't fully matured. And then it starts to pick up that red, and by the time it makes it to that red, almost like, looks kind of like a chili and a strawberry because it gets soft, but it does have this a little bit of a sweetness like a strawberry. It was more fruity. So this is like warm tasting, spicy like a peppercorn, but sometimes it tastes even spicier because that warmth sort of lingered longer than peppercorns. And it's floral, a little more floral than a regular peppercorns. And then when it gets to that red color, it almost tastes like a hot fruit or hot berry because it reminded me of a strawberry. Perhaps it's the texture and the color, but it did have like a bit of that berry-esque to it. And it's a little sweet. And it's very warm and a little spicy. So, wow, like so interesting to me. I can see these, you know, like just chopping thinly, slicing up and mixing it to anything. And it's just such a great addition. The great thing about this one and how it fits into my garden or any kind of space, and you probably can treat it as almost like a house plant. Grow it like really bright by the window because all they need is actually morning sun. This one I saw when I found out the lady grows it on her rooftop garden, but it's actually a shaded rooftop and it only gets like a little bit of at an angle with this morning sun hits it just for a few hours in the morning. Of course, I haven't tested yet, but I think there's a possibility I could probably keep this indoors. So after talking about all the the basic flavor profiles, I think I start to think about textures, like what kind of certain foods with textures that I would take with me. One of them is the Luffa gourd. I'm totally obsessed with this gourd. There's various different varieties out there, shapes, sizes. This one is the one I've been growing in my family for a really long time. I don't know the name of it. We've just been growing it forever. And it's really large. The unique thing about this one is that it stays, actually, you know how you can eat these when they're underdeveloped, right? Before they harden, yeah. But usually they're small, kind of size of a cucumber or something. But these ones, it can go up to about this size, 2 feet or 2.5 feet. Before the seeds start to really develop, it's still really soft. And to me, it's like marshmallow, the texture. It's so fluffy. It's like the inside of a baguette, that kind of texture. You see that bowl of soup I have there? I got the umami going with the mushroom. And it really was just 2 ingredients that made this bowl. Peel it first. I'll tell you what I can do with the skin later. A rough chop of these, the luffas. I just cooked up the mushrooms, drop it in the pot, close the lid, turn the heat up. It's just gonna melt. And this is all the water that came out of the luffa. There's 0 water added to this. So this would make a really amazing sweet vegetable, broth or add it on to make a stock with them. Yeah, and of course you can eat these sort of like a zucchini, or cucumbers. You can have them raw as well. So I've tried juicing these and you get a lot of juice as you can see. So this is amazing. I love how I can utilize this one thing, and then with a lot of squashes, you can pick those earliest tendrils and the younger parts as you're pruning back your vines. You can eat them too. So they're really good in stir fries, or you can cook them, quick blanch in your soups. And as I mentioned earlier about the skin, when I peel it, it makes such a great scrub. Put in a blender, yeah, a little water going, or maybe yogurt or honey or something you like, and it just creates the best scrub because it's not salt. Sometimes it's a bit too abrasive, or it gets your skin too dry, or oil. Sometimes it's so hard to wash that stuff off after. So this one, it's and you can control how smooth or how fine you want your scrubs to be. So that's really amazing. And I would just make these and keep it in the fridge for a week or so and just take it out and use it, And then of course on top of that, you can always wait till they dry up and collect them for sponges. And this variety, I've noticed that actually different luffas, when they dry, the fiber is slightly different. Some are softer than others, some are finer, some are more rough. You can tell if you're using it on your face, your skin's more sensitive, you'll be able to tell the difference. So this one has a fine attention. So this one, I use it for my skin, and then the other ones, if I were to grow the other varieties that are a bit more rough, I would use it for, cleaning dishes or anything around the house. And actually, the luffa makes really a great filter, or if you're filtering through things. So this is kind of, hey, if I can bring one plant, I'm gonna try to maximize the use out of this. Another texture, this is the grass jelly vine. This vine, just again, the one ingredient would make you jelly or jello. It takes full sun, it grows in part sun, it's a vine, it's, I wanted to say invasive, but it thrives. Once it starts picking up, it's really fast growing, especially in the winter, no, summer, sorry, when it warms up. But in the winter, they grow well in containers, so you can bring them inside. I've had them in like the dark for like a couple of months and they were fine. They're really drought tolerant. They prefer water, they definitely grow faster, but they seem to be just really resilient. And you know how you can pick the tender, the new growths to eat them just as a regular green. The taste is so mild, it doesn't really taste like much. This one's actually quite neutral with a little bit of like grassy flavor. It's so interesting to me that when you can pick the tender leaves to eat, but if you want to make jello, you want to find the more mature one with actually more of the pectin that's like developed in these thick, darker leaves like the one I'm holding, so that you can make something like this. So what you're seeing here is basically I harvest the leaves and I added a little bit of water and ran it through the blender. For some reason, it's really interesting, this plant, the juice of it, the pectin just wants to bind to itself. So after a while, it just starts to separate with the water. You just wait for like half an hour or something and it starts to coagulate, and this is what you get. I can actually make this and set it in the fridge for like a few days, but slowly you'll see that they'll start to separate more and more with the water. It just binds back to itself. So even when I try to experiment thinking, hey, maybe I can flavor this, like blend it with pineapple juice rather than just water, but it wouldn't do it.
Got it.
Yes. Yeah. I should come back with this and do a demo. Yeah, so it's like jello, it's wobbly. It's
So that's after you blend it, right?
because you're basically just trying to extract the juice. When I tried to feed it through just a juicer, that juice that came out was like a rubber band. It got my, yeah, I'm serious. Like I pressed the juice and it was stuck and I had to really pull it hard by the time I took it out and like try to break it. I could barely do it. It was like the most strong rubber band ever. It's crazy. It actually is really mild. It's so neutral. It's a little like grassy, yeah, a little sweet, like a grass, like a young tip of like wheat grass or something. So a little bit sweet. So like what I like, did I do that? Sorry. Yeah, so it has a very neutral taste. What I'd like to have fun with is if I had different fruits or like pomegranate seeds, so you can freeze different fruits or berries or coconut milk or something, and just put them all together like a fruit mix thing. And I add this. It's just like so much different textures and aromas going on, the creaminess and the thickness from the cream, you know, or maybe a little honey or syrup or whatever you like with it. It's just, I'm still amused every time I make them. Like, how does this thing just find this? It's just one ingredient, you know? Well, maybe two. I needed water to run the blender.
You were saying that it separates
From water.
from what did you mix like so if you make jello out of
That's the part I was still trying to find out. Yeah, because I tried doing pineapple juice or maybe acidity of, I'm not sure. I have to try maybe something, jicama juice or something that's not so acidic. I haven't figured out that part yet because I would love to make real jello with it, you know, like just that in a juice and make like a sweet jello. That would be amazing.
what about cooking it with like a jelly? Does that work? Or
Maybe, but yeah, probably but then it would just be like the gelatin or the agar-agar that's doing the work. But you are getting the greens, which I think is pretty cool, the chlorophyll, right? That's a really great way to intake too. It's kind of like when I make, you know, green smoothies or green juices that you know, soluble fibers, that's so good and it's very easy to digest and you can get it through this. And it's just so refreshing when I get to have this during summer, which is like their prime time when they're just growing like crazy. I love the idea of when your plants grow so fast, you have to cut back, and that makes you like well, you have to eat it, otherwise you're wasting all this food that you grow. Well, this You mean
To turn
Ju-
it into like a pesto with some like olive oil and some pine nuts or whatever, walnuts or whatever.
The only thing is these leaves, when they're more mature, it's very fibrous.
Oh,
Yeah. Yes. How, what? Oh, it's very flexible. Young, like more yellow, almost translucent, like that first growth for like that first week of growth of a new leaf. Almost like when you're picking tea leaves, the camellia tea, that tiny little needles they call it. So like they're really soft, but like very delicate. Yeah. Otherwise they do get fibrous, and so we just start extracting the juice. Take the juice instead. So even though everything that I've mentioned, all things have some sort of aroma to it, but if I had to choose one thing to grow and I need it for the pollinators, so I don't have to do all the work myself, is the chocolate daisy. The bees love them. I love them. I've been growing them for years, and a little bitter, but a little bitter is good when you add other flavors. But you get the yellow, and you get the smell, and this is just so amazing when you're walking through the garden. It's like cocoa. It seriously smells like more chocolate than any other ones that tell you that has like a hint of chocolate. This literally smells like a chocolate bar when I walk through. And it's so drought tolerant. There's spots that barely get any water when I say drought tolerant, and I'm from LA. So this thing really works well, once it's established, of course. And it just creates this really beautiful like mound that kind of cascades over. It's really nice in rock gardens. They love full sun. Yeah, great in containers. Imagine it spilling over like a hanging basket. Hanging baskets, usually we have sometimes like a drainage issue. It's just so much sun, it dries out so quickly. So this is one of those plants in like a sunny spot you want on something like hanging. This is it. It smells so good.
What part do you eat?
What part? Oh, the petals.
Petals?
Yeah, it's the petals.
Okay.
A little bitter, but yeah.
Yeah, I was just trying to think, because I like chocolate, so I'm thinking.
But chocolate is bitter. You're right. Yeah.
Chocolate is bitter.
It's definitely an experience when you create, like from taste to smells to different things you can touch and visually appealing, and just walking through your garden kind of is already helping to inspire what you want to make, for your next meal. A big part of growing food for me has a lot to do with my dog and my family, but my dog mainly, that I started growing food for her, and especially at the end when, end of life, where like all the vets said there's a chance her heart would stop when I take her home, and there was just something I realized I haven't done everything, and I started adding more foods into those medicinal herbs to her diet, and she wasn't even eating for a really long time, and I started feeding her, like with smoothies and the things that I grew. Eventually we were able to hold off, and it was like 2-3 months down the road, and that's a very long time when someone's not eating on their own, and you have to. Anyway, so the vet truly believed that it was the food that kind of helped her, like kept her going, because she was just like had this issue where she wasn't eating, but she was happy to walk and do all that stuff. She was just like the girl who wouldn't eat. So eventually we partnered with this wonderful vet, and he told me that he truly believed that it was the food and the medicinal herbs in the garden, and if I didn't start growing a garden, I wouldn't have been ready that day I wouldn't have been ready for the day. So yeah, that totally got to me. Like I was like, this is it, growing food, and as they say, let food be thy medicine. But you can also make it taste good, Yeah. So. Thank you so much, you guys. Questions? Yeah, shoot. Yeah.
Have you considered doing a cookbook?
Ooh, thank you. Oh, well, thank you for your support. I'll think about it. That would be fun. Thank you for the suggestion. I offer it right now through my website right now, and it's Wendyland. You type in Wendyland or wendyland.com, you'll see it. Yeah. But there's a lot of things that I mentioned here that Baker Creek does have. I don't know specifically, but generally, you definitely is better to take it through plants, like say, like celery and things like that. It's hard to overdose on, because it's not like concentrated where you just have that one single ingredient, right? Like the plants, you're taking through all the different minerals and the fibers and the nutrients that helps to balance everything. Yeah. I'm not a doctor, but that's just what I think. All right. Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.